In 2003, a game was developed by the company Running with Scissors. That year, I was just a mini baby who barely knew how to read. But a few years later, I remembered that my brother introduced me to this game. Yes. If you have an older brother, sooner or later he will show you some band, game, music, or any other type of media that your parents wouldn't let you consume. Older brothers are amazing. And I remember how much fun my teenage self had with this game. I must be a boomer trapped in a fanboy's body because I love boomer shooters, and although the Postal game doesn't fit into this category at all, I can just walk and shoot without wasting any brain power and not care about the story of this game, which is extremely fun for me. And at that time, when I consumed something related to Postal, it was always to say how violent the game was, and that's okay. I know that nowadays we are used to video games, and this kind of thing is no longer shocking, but my brain was born in 2000s, and I was thinking, people in 2003 were a bunch of snowflakes. Postal 2, it's just shitpost and dark humor. Of course, it might be shocking for someone who isn't used to video games to see this.
Slow roasted goodness.
But then, I can do this. Postal 2 allows me to do several things that are shocking, but the game always finds a way to make me laugh with something stupid right after. This game is almost like an episode of South Park. The game doesn't take itself seriously. I can burn down the bank, but the game gives me a funny cutscene right after, or allows me to shoot everyone in this mall, but that's okay because Gary Collerman is here. There is always something funny and stupid to suppress all the violence in this game. The Postal dude at his core is a mess. But you forget that with all the jokes and unusual situations that the game spits on your screen. The next game followed the same logic, but no one besides me had fun playing this game, so let's not talk about it. And I feel that the franchise preferred to go down this shitpost and South Park path. Besides, the game always gives you the chance to solve everything without violence. But everyone already knows that. And for many years, I always found it funny how in the past, anything was shocking and controversial. Postal 2 even appeared in a Black Eyed Peas video. Oh my god, this is so fever dream. I think that for a game to be disturbing, it needs much more than just exaggerated violence. It needs a whole environment. Manhunt is a good example of this. I understand all the controversy that this game generated when it was released, and I agree that this game has a heavy atmosphere. I mean, just red liquid on the screen? Nah, that's not disturbing. Slasher movies have been around since 1974, I'm already used to this kind of thing. So for a long time, I just thought that all the fame that Postal had was due to an extremely dated feeling from the early 2000s that made parents and politicians outraged by violence in video games. But that's when I noticed something. There's a number 2 here. So something was released before that. And then, in the distant year of 2015, almost 10 years ago, I played the first Postal for the first time. And it was scary. As I said, for a game to be disturbing, red liquid is not enough. And there's no point in allowing me to play a mass murder, but at the same time, give me a fun environment. And Postal 1 gave me the perfect setting. Postal Dude's house, it's not a trailer with an annoying wife complaining all the time, but an isolated house that looks really old that he just comes out of and starts shooting. His thoughts are not funny and sarcastic comments, but they are, well... While Postal 2 allows you to finish the game without killing anyone, Postal 1 Soundtrack? What soundtrack? You only hear one thing in this game. But the game menu and loading screens have sounds that are strange to say the least. The art of the game is very beautiful, the map looks hand-drawn, I think they are very charming, but some of the game's art doesn't show that Postal Dude as a funny and even likable guy, without humor and without parodies of real life. Everything here is in an orange and brown color palette, with distorted figures that bring a mix of various feelings and that somehow conveying how damaged the mind of the first Postal Dude is. This game, unlike its successors, doesn't care about anything other than being the most real mass simulator you've ever seen in the franchise. No songs, jokes, funny characters, jokes, or anything else that tries to trivialize what is happening on the screen. Even the mechanic is different in both games, with Postal 2 once again making fun of it. Here you don't need to buy milk or get paid, you just walk and shoot, in the most different scenarios until the end of the game. Postal 1 has a much more serious atmosphere than the rest of the games in the franchise, which took a more humorous turn. How this becomes clear when we research the reason for the future censorship that newer versions of Postal 1 received. As the years passed, people began to become more accustomed to violence in video games, and what was shocking in 1997, it's no longer shocking today. It's no wonder no one cares about hatred. Postal is a game that has its own visual identity, and it's very convincing in the idea that the game wants to convey. Let's talk, for example, about hatred. Enough with this joke, I already made it 3 times in a row in that bad Evangelion video that nobody cares but me. Hatred is like, I live in a black and white world because I hate everyone, and my world is black and white because, yes, sadness and hate, yeah, and I look like that guy from Cannibal Corpse, I don't remember his name, yes, black and white world. Everything here is so generic. The idea of a black and white world to convey this feeling of sadness, for God's sake, black metal bands have been doing this since 1990. Postal invests in images that seem dirty. Everything here is as if it were old and rusting. Images of distorted faces, scary sounds, humanoid figures. It's a much more original way of showing pain and sadness than just a black and white filter. The change that occurred from the first to the second game in the franchise is something that takes anyone who knew the newer games before knowing the first one by surprise. Despite being a product of its time, the first Postal game can still be uncomfortable today. Running with scissors didn't take it easy in the production of this game, and don't get me wrong, I understand and agree with the changes made in the most recent games. Come on guys, do I look like an edgelord to you? But it is still surprising how a franchise that started out making such a shocking game managed to stay relevant and even become a little popular nowadays. There's a certain point where people draw the line on what is tolerable or not for violence in video games. Violent games made by famous companies often have other elements and are not entirely based on this. A good example is the Grand Theft Auto franchise, Manhunt, Mortal Kombat, or any other game that generated drama in the 90s and 2000s due to some violence. Despite all the violent content in the games, they are games that were never purely based on that. You have a story behind them, your objectives are not empty, and all the violence seen in these games is justified within the story of the game itself. But here, we are talking about a game that only simulates a mass Postal is not the only game made for this purpose. Several other games have addressed the subject, but none of them are remembered. They have not become relevant franchises. Some have not even become known. Usually, when we talk about shocking games that portray explicit violence, we are generally not talking about a relatively well-known indie company with many published games. They are usually very bad games made by a single guy who wanted to shock. I myself have already made a video about this.
Fukinshin is a Japanese word that can be translated as imprudence, improper, or unscrupulous. In short, Fukinshin games are known for covering sensitive topics for most people. These are games that mostly work with subjects such as tragedies and crime.
Generally, creating a game like this will break your legs. Your game will be banned, maybe you will lose money, and nowadays, this type of situation is a real problem in many countries, especially in the United States of America, which justifies the huge amount of negative criticism that your game will receive. But then, why wasn't the Postal franchise extinguished? Well, the answer to this question is obvious. The Postal game adapted over time, and embracing the humorous tone was the best way to keep the franchise alive to this day, and the guys know how to do marketing with the fame that the franchise carries. But actually, for me, the answer lies in time. The first game was released in 1997, 2 years before that thing that happened in Colorado. This crime was a shock not only in America, and at that time it was very common for the media to look for culprits for this type of crime in entertainment. Anyone who lived through that time remembers it well. And in the midst of an entire society that looked to entertainment for someone to blame for crimes that were happening in the real world, keeping the Postal franchise the way it was not a smart decision if Running with Scissors wanted to keep the game alive. By bringing other elements to its game, Running with Scissors would continue to receive a lot of criticism, yes, but it also created an identity for its game, which was no longer just a mass simulator. Nowadays, Postal Dude has personality. Just take a look at all the fan arts that fans of the franchise sent to the Running with Scissors website. Postal Dude Catboy, Postal Dude Furry, Postal Dude Hello Kitty, and for some reason a lot of fan arts of him wearing women's clothes. To be honest, he's very cute. Hey, who wrote that in my script? Furthermore, we can look at this whole situation from a different perspective. This type of content no longer shocks. Violent games are no longer a new thing. The internet has allowed us to have access to an infinity of content, even content that shocks and causes discomfort. Today, people are more numb to this kind of content than in 1997, when we encounter violence in the real world. Many people have decided to blame the entertainment. On the other hand, some people were more anesthetized, and I'm not the one who says this, but Running with Scissors itself, who made this very clear several times. In my humble opinion, games like Hatred and this other one here that I didn't even bother to research the name of, I'm sorry, I'm a YouTuber, not a journalist, they are made solely with the aim of bordering and trying to shock people, something very similar to what I said in my video about Fukinshin games, but the changes made to the franchise and the charismatic tone that even won over some fans came to give identity and personality to these games and characters. All of this, in my opinion, show us how much Running with Scissors likes these games and these characters and how committed they are to these games. They even acknowledge on their official website that Postal 3 is a bad game. How many companies have you seen do this? Postal 2 is a game that received a DLC more than 10 years after its release. The most recent game in the franchise was released in 2022. There was an effort to keep this franchise alive and updated, something that would perhaps have not been possible if Running with Scissors had insisted on producing only shocking content. And I think this is what made Running with Scissors a charismatic company. At the same time, they didn't abandon their past, they still reinvented themselves and became something very interesting. Their own Twitter says they have no regrets. And so despite seeing Postal 1 as a disturbing game, one of the most intense I've ever played, I can't see the franchise in the same way I see Postal 1, and I can't see Running with Scissors as a company that just wants to shock for the sake of shocking. I can't deny, I like these guys. Well guys, this video was initially going to be a video just to talk about Postal 1, but in the middle of production I decided that I wanted to talk about the changes that the franchise adopted and my opinion on why these changes occurred, but I want to know from you. Have you already played the first Postal? What do you think of the changes that have happened? I would really like to hear from you. This video was a bit of work because I needed to censor a lot of words and I couldn't even expand on some topics because you know how YouTube is about this. So please, like and subscribe, you already know what to do, and I hope I can see you next time.